Setting a price, of course, is just part of the carbon puzzle. As we reported recently, federal lawmakers are also working on what's called the Carbon Farming Initiative. It's meant to give farmers and others a way of making money out of cutting greenhouse emissions. Chris Clark explains.
Sam Archer runs Kincora near Gundagai in southern New South Wales.
Push him up!
He's one version of the modern Australian farmer, informed and pragmatic. When the Archers first came here, they brought the standard hardware of Australian rural life, the saw and the axe. Farming land meant clearing it first, and the Archers set about the task with the determination characteristic of the age. By the time it was Sam Archer's turn to run the place, the priorities seemed a little different, and so his methods differ markedly from his forebears. He's put thousands of trees back into the landscape and has plans to put back many more.
My grandfather moved here after the First World War in 1922.
And so across that side you can see where you've already done some replanting, and you'd do something similar here, would you?
Yes, if the price is right, we'd look at planting trees in this landscape here.
So what do you currently use it for?
Just grazing, but the returns from these are fairly marginal, so we'd be looking for a more cost-effective return.
The federal government has a plan which it says will make it easier for Sam Archer and others to plant the trees they want through a system of carbon credits, where farmers either cut emissions or store extra carbon. The plan before Parliament is called the Carbon Farming Initiative.
The idea behind the Carbon Farming Initiative is simple enough. If farmers can show that they've cut their emissions of greenhouse gases or stored extra carbon, they can claim credits, and those credits can be sold to others and used to offset their emissions. The tricky part for the government is designing a scheme that guarantees that those offsets are genuine.
Andrew McIntosh specialises in environmental law at the Australian National University.
There's certainly a risk that projects will be created that won't be generating credits or will be given credits where they shouldn't be because there's no environmental integrity.
So there are tough conditions farmers will have to meet before they're given credits.
If you want to claim credits for cutting emissions, then you have to show that what you've done is additional, that you weren't doing it before or that it's not widely used. And if you're storing carbon, you have to store it permanently, and that means 100 years.
An expert committee will make sure the science stacks up.
The big task for this Domestic Offsets Integrity Commission is setting the methods and the methodologies that will apply to determining when and how many credits the projects get. They can do that on a project-by-project basis, and really their task is to do it on multiple projects. For project types, they will set methodologies, and then if projects comply with those methodologies, they'll be entitled to credits.
And who'll buy these credits that farmers and others will be entitled to? Well, people like Andrew Grant, for one. He heads CO2 Australia. It plants trees as carbon sinks for companies which want to offset their emissions.
Well, it's critical for our business and the voluntary market at large, because what the Carbon Farming Initiative does is it gives credibility, authenticity and rigour to a market that is lacking that at the moment. And a buyer of carbon needs confidence that when they buy a carbon credit, that it's real, it's measurable, it's not double counted, and that it's been signed off by an auditor. So it's got to have those features. Secondarily, the Carbon Farming Initiative enables project proponents to export their carbon into international markets. So it gives us access to better pricing, bigger markets in the world.
By planting trees, we've managed to mitigate erosion. It meant we excluded stock for 3 years, so the native pastures have come back.
Tree planting is one carbon storage method that might find favour under the Carbon Farming Initiative. Sam Archer provides a simple example. He'd like to plant more trees on certain parts of his farm.
Definitely, it's our aspiration to do it across most of our hills, because we just see this as sort of integral to being able to work with the landscape to find that balance between production and environmental outcomes as well.
He estimates that running sheep on hill country returns no more than $20 a hectare. But carbon credits could make it worthwhile planting more trees.
So, for example, if these trees around us sequester 2 tonnes per annum and I'm paid $25 per tonne, I'm looking at $50 per hectare return here. as opposed to $20 per hectare just under a livestock system.
And most farmers will think long and hard before permanently changing the way they use their land.
We are locking in land use for the next 100 years, and while sitting here now, we may be able to look out 10 or 20 years and say, OK, well, that would be a prudent move. I think it would be... It's challenging to contemplate locking land use in for 100 years.
There are other possibilities under the Carbon Farming Initiative where permanence is not an issue. Flaring methane from animal waste will qualify for a carbon credit. Covering effluent ponds is the first step. Ralph Luton is part of the Methane to Markets group funded by government and industry.
What we've done in the Methane to Markets program is do a lot of research about what does a load generate as far as gas. What we're seeing here with this project is now what's the practicality of that? If we put a cover over a dam, over a pond like this, that's bubbling with methane, how much can we catch? How much can we convert that into energy such as power or heat?
At this Queensland piggery, they're going to replace the LPG they use to run the heating with methane from animal waste they've captured from this effluent pond.
We expect that we'll be able to, in the next stage of the project, to offset the LPG usage at this piggery by about 50%. With the sort of system that you see in place here, and that could result in a saving of something like $20,000 a year in terms of LPG usage.
That quickly makes business sense to a piggery owner.
We're spending about $80,000 a year on electricity and LPG, and if we can get back $20,000 to $25,000 from the methane collection, we would view that very favourably.
Then throw in carbon credits at $20 a tonne, and the numbers look better still.
At the moment, we've worked it out to be about, if it's $20 a tonne, about $3 a finished pig, which is a significant incentive for the producers to do something about it.
So in a dairy, piggery or any intensive livestock business, the Carbon Farming Initiative could bring multiple benefits.
So it's actually a two-step process here. I can save some money by generating my power and my heat by using a waste, and then I can go to the government and say, hang on, you've got a carbon price in place. I've taken 21 times the CO2 effect from methane out of the system. What's my carbon credits for that? And I think that's the important step to realise.
Of course, some or all of these benefits might be wiped off if other costs go up because of an emissions reduction scheme. But the Carbon Farming Initiative doesn't force farmers to do anything.
No farmers are going to be forced to do anything under this scheme. It's all about voluntary capacity to generate credits. Now, the question mark that arises, and the big one is there going to be enough of an incentive for farmers to change their practice? Certainly before the introduction of a carbon price, I can say with fair confidence that no, the price that's out there for voluntary credits is simply too small to change farming practices.
Back in Canberra, Parliament's yet to debate the detail in the Carbon Farming Initiative. The National Farmers Federation is broadly supportive, while also lobbying strongly against a carbon price that would give the plan real effect.
Look, our view at the moment is that the Carbon Farming Initiative is a step forward. It's a recognition of the work that's been done prior. It's recognition of the part that agriculture can actually play in the future. And there's going to be a lot of politics played around the whole thing. That's the position that our members have put us, the policy our members have given us at the moment. And there's some variation within our members about what they think should be done or shouldn't be done. We're saying that there are two different issues. The Carbon Farming Initiative legislation is one piece, the carbon tax is a completely separate piece. You can't say that if we introduce a carbon tax, farmers will be saved by the Carbon Farming Initiative, because quite frankly, that's just not right.
There are some who believe the country's soils hold the key to dealing with Australia's greenhouse gas emissions. Carbon is stored in soil just as it is in trees. But to date, it's trees we think of mostly as carbon sinks.
Trees have been important initially because the science that underpins it is well proven, and it takes a long time to get good science to give you the confidence to invest in a technology, and it's cause and effect really. There's not been a strong economic driver over the last 20 years to have a huge body of soil carbon science undertaken.
If the federal government's Carbon Farming Initiative becomes law, farmers might one day be paid for storing extra carbon in their soil. But before that can happen, we need a better idea of how much carbon the country's agricultural lands hold.
Soil carbon, what we don't know yet is, firstly, how strong is the science? So how much carbon per hectare in a variety of landscapes is actually sequestered, the permanence of that sequestration, so it's not just cycled out of the paddock and into the atmosphere.
So we've got the points picked out.
Most farmers know the value of soil carbon, even if they don't know how much carbon is in their soil. Soils that are high in carbon are usually more productive.
Random selected 40 of those, which we're going to sample today. We've got GPSs of them in advance, and that will give us 120 samples in total as we're going to measure at 3 depths.
Right, let's get it going.
Jeff Baldock and his CSIRO colleagues are measuring the carbon content of soils.
We're going to a little over 3,000 different sites around the country, and we're implementing a sampling program like this where we'll go and collect a minimum of 10 samples from each of those paddocks we visit.
There are different ways of taking samples.
This spot.
From mobile hydraulic core samplers
First, let's just
to this more painstaking manual method. But accuracy is important and care needs to be taken, since these small samples will ultimately be used to calculate tonnes of carbon per hectare.
Okay, and then we'll clean this bit off the outside so that it doesn't contribute to the actual sample we're trying to work with.
Each of the samples will go back to the lab to be analysed for organic carbon.
We talk about particulate organic carbon, which is really partially decomposed little bits and pieces of organic matter that we may or may not be able to see with our own eyes. Sometimes we need magnifying glasses of some kind to see them. The next fraction we look at is something we'll call humus, which is the really well decomposed stuff. And that tends to be more molecules or dominated more by organic things stuck on soil particles. We don't see the structure of a root anymore or the structure of a leaf. It's been broken down to that extent. And the last form of carbon we look at is called, we're calling it resistant, but it's really dominated by charcoal in the Australian context.
So they're taking samples at 3 depths. That'll give an idea of the different types of soil carbon at different sites and how they might change over time. The different colours of the 3 soil samples is a rough guide to the different types and densities of carbon.
So when we're trying to work out carbon accounting and understand whether a particular management practice, such as the one that's been employed here, has a chance of shifting soil carbon values around, by doing this staged approach, we get a little bit more detail than we would have if we'd have just taken a single sample.
CSIRO's Soil Carbon Research Program will link these carbon values to soil type, land management and other factors like rainfall.
When we put that whole data set together, it'll give us a really good idea of what the low end and the